I'm going to give you an honest review of Call to the Lamb and tell you everything that you need to know before you buy the game, should you buy it, all that sort of stuff. Now, as a reference as to who am I as a gamer, I'm someone who's played games for like 30,000 hours, started when I was 3 years old. I've been able to enjoy every game from roguelikes, FPS, grand strategy, shooter games, JRPGs. I mean, I've found something that I like in literally every genre, just so you know who it is that's giving you this review and what their gaming background is. So what is Call to the Lamb? What type of game is it, and is it fun? Well, first off, it's pretty fun if you're into that type of game. So what type of game is it then? Well, Call to the Lamb is definitely a roguelike game, if you know what that is, where you go in dungeons, you pick up a weapon and armor, you go through a dungeon fighting enemies, you get stronger throughout the game. Like, it's sort of a roguelike, I guess. It's a little different than the generic roguelike template. But there's also an element of the game which is kind of like an RTS, where you have followers that you get into your cult, and you can have them build things, you can have them farm and gather resources in order to keep feeding them and keep them alive. They worship you to give you basically XP. There's also, they worship you another way with sermons and other rites to give you a different form of XP to level up your like actual weapons can drop in dungeons and things. So like, it's got a lot to it, more than a generic roguelike. So in this game, you'll generally go into dungeons, fight enemies, you pick a weapon, you pick what weapon picks you in a sense. You can pick a hammer, an axe, a weird hand weapon thing, or a sword. It just depends on what it gives you. And there's also an element to combat where it's called curses, which are usually some type of ranged magic attack. You can only use so many at a time, and then killing enemies drops fervor, is what it's called. And that's how you recharge those curses. So the game's really trying to limit you on your ability to use ranged attack. They really want you to focus on basically playing, it almost feels like two-dimensional Dark Souls, but with no ranged abilities, other than the curses, obviously. So there's a iframe roll mechanic, just like in Dark Souls and Elden Ring and stuff. And then there's just, that in Melee. And then the curses, obviously. And it's honestly pretty fun. The combat's pretty clean. I've beat the entire game, and I can say with honesty, the combat for a Melee 2D Dark Souls-like combat is really clean, really fun, really good. The bosses, have fun mechanics and stuff. The game itself is what I like to call a really good dopamine loop. And what I mean by that is that once you get started, if you're having fun, they do a really good job where, like, you're 10 minutes in, and as a reference, some games, and maybe some of you out there are familiar with this, some games, you're 10 minutes in, and you're at a point of, like, information overload, or you're just feeling like, oh my god, this is just too much at once, I don't understand what's happening, or maybe you're like, I just want to get through this tutorial, holy crap, there's all those things that can happen in games. This game does not have that. This game, it's pretty straight, where you're just, like, straight into it, and 10 minutes in, you're already trapped in the dopamine loop of like, okay, I go in, oh, I got more followers, okay, put them in, okay, recruit them, okay, gonna build this, oh, I need to get more resources, let me go in and then get some wood and then come back and then cut these trees and then go here and then do that, and you're just like, go, 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 go. And Call to the Lamb does a really good job of that, to getting you hooked into that, like, immediately, almost immediately. There's not a lot of just boredom and confusion in the beginning. You're just right into it, having fun. So from that element, it's great. I actually enjoyed that a lot. Now, I don't want to really spoil too much about the game, so I'm not really going to go into like what happens, but it's just like you go through dungeons, there's bosses, there is a story that you follow, and it's not a very long story, and it depends on how much you get sidetracked on your building up your base and stuff like that, and it just depends on how fast you are with this type of game. I would say, if you're looking for a reference of how long will this game last you, it just depends on a lot of factors. If you're like me, where you beat it one time and you're just kind of done after that, like, I personally didn't find a lot of replayability in it. The only replayability would have been if I wanted to play a second save file and start over and do the whole thing with the difficulty on max. There's difficulty setting: easy, medium, hard, very hard. And if I would have done that and then beat it, then I think I would just be done at that point. Like, there's not a ton of replayability for it like that. But in the one playthrough you do have, it's pretty fun. It's pretty fun. And it's going to be like, I would say between 8 and 20 hours of gameplay to beat the game for your average player, depending on how slow you go, how long you take your time. Are you going to sit there and micromanage your followers perfectly and not, macro things at all? Then it could take, longer. But yeah, generally talking 8 to 20 hours of gameplay, and then you'll have beaten the game one time. Then it's up to you. Do you want to play again, or do you want to play the post game? There is a post game to it where after you beat it, you can still continue to collect all the fleeces and collect all these things, do all the stuff, whatever. So there's a little bit more. If you include that, then you're talking like maybe 12 to 30 hours, depending on the player, of gameplay before you're done with your one playthrough. Maybe a little bit more if you really take your time. And then if you are going to play again, like if you're able to want to start a new save file and go on to start a different difficulty and just beat the whole game again, then take whatever that is and then double it or even higher, because on very hard it could take you longer because you might be dying a lot. So then instead of being 8 to 20, it might be like 15 to 30 just because of deaths and things like that. So that's generally what to expect in that sense. So if you're looking for a game to keep you busy for thousands of hours like an MMO, I would be shocked if this game could do that for you. This is one of those games that you buy, you have fun for a few days, and it's done. And that's the type of game that it is. I think it was $25 on release. I think that's what I paid. You'll have to go look at the Steam store. I think it's $25. So it's not an unreasonable price for, 2-3 days of fun. And it was a lot of fun. So you take account not just how long you're having fun, but the magnitude to which you're having fun. And in my case, on a fun scale of 1 to 10, for the majority of the time, I was having fun at like an 8 out of 10, I would say. Like, I was having a lot of fun. It wasn't the most fun I've ever had in my life playing a game, but it was pretty good. And I was pretty stuck in the loop, just playing and playing and playing. I want to beat this and then I'll make some videos, right? That's what I was thinking, because I have YouTube, and it was good times. Good times. Now, this game's kind of like a smaller, almost indie game, I think, in a way, not fully, though. And there are some flaws to the game, but there's nothing that really stood out too much. There are like little things I could critique, like the position of the map when you're in dungeons is something about the way that it's positioned, sized, and like the imagery to it that makes it really hard to see. Like I'll be going through a dungeon and I'm like trying to get my eyes to look over at the dungeon to see the rooms and what order they're in and where the exits are for where I'm at. And it was like, it's something about the way they did it. It was like, it just was poor implementation the way it looked. It was real, like, I don't know. It just was not natural trying to get your eyes to go look at it and understand. And then also another critique with dungeons were a little too linear. They were RNG kind of, but even in like the last ones, I was really hoping it would get to a point where you'd like go one way, you'd lead to a dead end, you come back, backtrack, find another way. But it was always like, if it diverged from the main path, there was maybe 1 or 2 rooms. Even in the last place, it was like, okay, I need to go the one way, but if I go the wrong way, there's like 1 room, maybe 2, and then a dead end. And I just go back and I just go the right way. So there wasn't like a whole lot of discoverability in the RNG dungeons. That was also another like drawback, although it wasn't a huge drawback. Like it didn't really affect the playability of the game very much. And there's also poor implementation of like quests just for the followers. Like your followers will give you quests, and it very quickly became apparent that it's better to just ignore them. Like they go up to you and they have a quest, a little red thing above their head, and they want like, hey, you want to talk? Just ignore them. Like it was not worth. Like it was, the reward was not worth the risk of what they would be asking you. And if you say no, then you lose all this faith and stuff. So it was like there were things at poor implementation, but I would say overall, it didn't affect the gameplay experience that much. Like if they were fixed and all those things were flawless and felt right, it would only be like on a scale of 1 to 10, an extra 0.5 higher in my mind. Like they weren't game-breaking problems in my opinion. So overall, really good game. Like in conclusion, there's not much else to say about the game. I mean, there's not many mechanics. I pretty much just described everything I can without completely spoiling the story and things for you guys. But I would recommend the game if you have the disposable income to spend $25 for 3 to, depending on how much you play every day, 2 to 10 days of entertainment, depending you play like an hour or 2 a day, or you binge 10 hours at a time like me. It just depends. If that makes sense to you and you want to have a lot of fun for that long, then yeah, go ahead, pick it up. It also depends on what type of games you like. I mean, obviously, if you're like someone who only plays shooter games or something, you might not have that much fun with this type of game. Now, if you like roguelike games or you like city simulation building games, yeah, maybe you'll like it depending. City simulation building is kind of a stretch. Like, it is fun to build the things, but you still got to play a roguelike more than you have to build the city equivalent. So, you'll have to like look at it for yourself and make your decision on that, depending on what type of player you are. But for me personally, as an all-arounder, as someone who likes games from every genre, and I've been able to enjoy so many different games from so many different genres. I'm not someone who's like, a one-trick Andy with game genres. I've played so many and been able to enjoy them for what they are. From that perspective, I would rate the game probably about an 8 out of 10. Right around an 8 out of 10. It was like great, not the greatest thing ever. You know, it wasn't like, I mean, because like what would a 10 be? A 10 would be even more fun, and I can play for like 500 hours before getting burnout. Now, but there aren't very many games that are going to hit a 10, obviously. So that's a high bar to reach for. But yeah, so 8 out of 10 for a general audience if you're open to, you know, any kind of game. And if you really like roguelikes and what this game has to offer, you're that type of player that would enjoy this, maybe be a little bit higher, like 8.5 or something. Maybe 9, probably not, though, probably 8.5. So yeah, that's it. That's my review. I just wanted to give you guys a reference in case you were on the fence about buying it, or maybe you hadn't even heard about it until this video, and you just need something to keep yourself busy for a few days, or you just want to, you know, play a game, have fun for a few days, then yeah, now you know more about Call to the Lamb. It's pretty decent for the price. And I personally highly recommend this game if you have some time and just want to, you know, pass a few days having fun, playing a video game, you know, old school style, just buy a single player game and have some fun.